dare you?
Okay, so let's get to some quick fire questions, and maybe you can go through these real quick. You don't have to pull up a preset, but maybe you can just at least answer it to your best of your ability. Okay, so these are just some questions that might spark the interest of other people wanting to get into the Bible. All right. So circumcision. Most Catholic men are not circumcised because Catholic Church teaches us that we shouldn't do that, I guess. And what do you guys think? Should a 30-year-old man get circumcision if he needs to?
If he's an Israelite, yes. If you're an Israelite, you get circumcised ASAP. If you haven't done so, if you have a newborn son, he is to get circumcised on the 8th day. It is law. It is what it is, and there's no getting around it because we teach that none of the law has been done away with. So every law that applies to you is something you must keep, right? There's certain laws we can't keep because we're not in circumstances to keep them, but every law you are able to keep and can keep, you are to keep, point blank, period. So there's no way around circumcision. You must get it if you're a man.
Okay, well, that answers that one. Okay, so in the Bible, we see a lot of men of God, holy men of God, have multiple wives and concubines. Does the Israelite movement also preach that that's acceptable?
That is acceptable, yes. An Israelite man is authorized and allowed to have multiple wives. He can also have who you would call concubines, which concubine means lesser wife, right? And the rules of adultery apply to women, to your wives, as well as your concubines, right? So if you have a concubine, the lesser wife, which would be a woman of another nation, you can't just sleep with her and let her go and have her go sleep with another man or whatever. If she's with you and you're sleeping with her, that is a bond that you maintain together while you choose to keep her. And you can't just be sleeping around with women and having them go deal with other women or with other, women nowadays, right? But other men, and have that be lawful. That's unlawful. But to answer you, yes, an Israelite man can have multiple wives and concubines if he wishes.
Let's see.
That is law permits it.
I mean, Mexicans kind of already do that. Like, don't you hear about it? Like, a lot of Mexican dads like have a girl in Mexico, a girl in U.S. They're both their wives and stuff. They both got them, hooked up with a house, their own house there.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's see. But a lot of Mexican women, I don't know, man. That's not gonna fly. I don't think so.
That's fine. Quick. That's fine. You don't have to agree with it, but it's law and it's lawful, right? And not only that, but there's no punishment for not doing it. So if you wanted to have one wife and just stay with one wife, you're well within your rights to do that and have it be that way. But if you start saying that a man must have one wife and one wife only, that's where you start to add to the law and under sin. Because it's a sin to make up laws and say, no, you can't have multiple wives. You must have one wife. That's not in the law. But you are free to have one wife if you wish and keep it to one wife if you want to do that. You're not breaking the law of women, but you are free to have more than one if you want.
Okay, and then you said that you couldn't be grafted in by grace, but what if I decided to marry a white woman? You know what I mean, or a Japanese woman? Like, would I be committing a sin?
No. Well, what is marriage, right? Marriage is having sex with a woman. That's marriage, biblically defined. But that's with an Israelite woman. When you lay with an Israelite woman, like, for example, your wife, that is a bond that is forever, so long as you're on this earth breathing and living, right? You cannot divorce your wife unless she commits adultery or a form of fornication, which would be like homosexuality, adultery. She don't sleep with another man, then you can divorce her. But other than that, you are not authorized to divorce your wife. Even if you have a marriage on paper, that doesn't mean anything. In the eyes of God, she was your wife and you had sex with her. So that's forever. Now with a concubine, a woman of another nation, a white woman or Chinese woman or whatever, you can do what's called a putting away. So you can essentially what's called a divorce, a separation, and you can cast them away, you can put them away, but you can't just be dealing with them willy-nilly, sleeping with them, putting away, sleeping with them, putting away. They can go deal with another man. That's off, right? If they're with you, they're with you. And if you stop dealing with them and you stop having a relationship with them, that's it. You can't keep jumping back and forth.
Okay, right? Beautiful.
If I can add to on the multiple wife topic, having multiple wives, once you start understanding the law, a man doesn't have multiple wives for fun or to boast. It's a very difficult balancing, stressful responsibility because you have to take care of every wife equally and provide. And the purpose for it is so your nation and your tribe multiplies a lot more faster. You get to grow and be fruitful and multiply, which is the commandment. But it's not for fun. You don't jump into such a responsibility for fun. Because a lot of women think like, oh, I'm going to go and get all this. Bullying, you can do all this. It's like, I want to take the responsibility for that. Yeah, oh no, that's a lot of bills to pay.
Brothers do make that mistake. They end up laying with more than one woman, and if they're really about the law, they're really about God, they find out that they just can't stop. They just can't divorce a woman because they got tired of it, or the sex got boring or whatever. If you lay with an Israelite woman, being an Israelite man, that is for the rest of your life, whether you like it or not. And if you separate from that woman for any reason other than her sleeping with another man or another woman, or bestiality, pedophilia, adultery, fornication, if you separate because you don't like the cooking or whatever, then that sin is on you and you're worthy of death for it, right? So it's not a laughing matter. And multiple wives and having a wife in general is not a game.
That makes sense. So your guys' view is that marriage is so sacred. Or sex is so sacred. It bonds you together with that person. So be careful who the hell you lay around with, right?
Right, and especially because those that are listening that are Israelites, now you know. So you can't plead ignorance. So you can be like, oh, I don't know. No, once you hear it, you're on the hook, whether you like it or not. That's how serious the Bible is. Once an Israelite hears this word, whether you receive it or not, you've heard it, so you're on the hook for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, moving on. Next question is diet. What do you guys do to limit your diet? What are some of the things that we can avoid now that we're in this new life of being an Israelite?
For example, Leviticus 11 tells you what food to stay away from.
Leviticus 11?
You can't eat pork, you can't eat shellfish, crab, lobster. The only seafood that's lawful is that which has fins and scales, right? So any form of fish that has fins and scales, clearly fins and scales that you can see, is lawful for you to eat. Anything else would be considered unlawful. You can eat deer, you can eat bison, you can eat chicken, you can eat cow, buffalo, that which divides the hood and chews the cud, right? There's animals that divide the hood but don't chew the cud, which means their digestive system, that are clearly unlawful. You can't eat rabbits, you can't eat rats, you can't eat rodents, you can't eat squirrels. Reptiles are out, shark is out, whale, anything like that. There's a lot of animals that you cannot deal with. But, really good, there's lamb, right? There's really good meat that you can cook up and prepare that's perfectly lawful and delicious. You don't have to go dealing with pork or anything like that. That's what we stand on. We stand on the dietary laws of the law. There's also fasting. If you're dealing with a very heavy situation, if you're fighting demons, if you're fighting addiction, if you're dealing with a very stressful problem that you're trying to solve, the Bible prescribes fasting. So, fasting 24 hours, and it's not just food. You can fast from, watching movies. You can fast from alcohol. You can fast from, eating a specific kind of food. You can fast from listening to a certain kind of music, right? But speaking of dietary, the Bible prescribes fasting as well.
Okay, gotcha.
To help cleanse your body, help line you up spiritually with the Most High.
Right. I've started practicing no pork. No nothing without a scale, and obviously, yeah. And I haven't missed bacon. I haven't missed al pastor tacos. Really. There's been some times where I've accidentally ate some Brussels sprouts that had bacon bits in it, and I didn't know just because I was dumb. But other than that, yeah, not really missing any of that. Used to love shrimp tacos. Now I don't eat that, and ain't missing too much of that. Right. Still got fried fish tacos, so that's pretty sweet. Okay, cool. Moving on.
Oh, also, sorry, but anything that comes from seed. So any vegetable or fruit that comes from seed, mushrooms come from spores, so mushrooms will be out. Can't deal with mushrooms, but obviously there's a world of vegetables and fruit that you can enjoy, and that are at your disposal that come from seed.
Okay, what about bread? Is the bread okay? Like unleavened bread and stuff, or is that a thing?
Well, unleavened bread is, of course, it's lawful. It's also prescribed in certain not religious, but ceremonies in the law. For example, after the Passover, you're ordered to eat unleavened bread for 7 days.
As opposed to regular bread, or
bread, though, because I'm sure you're referring to what yeast is.
Yeah,
yeast is a type of I think fungus or mold.
Right.
But it's not a derivative of like the spores that create your typical mushrooms. Different. So it's lawful for you to eat bread.
Okay, great. Shout out to flour tortillas. Let's see. Favorite person in the Bible. We'll start with you, or whichever one. Besides Jesus Christ.
Oh.
Dang. Favorite person in the Bible. That's a hard question. There's a lot, but
yeah, and why?
I would say. Man, that's a hard question, bro. I would say Moses.
Yeah.
Okay, Moses. Because he's like in the position where we are at now, being raised in another nation. Moses was raised with the Egyptians.
Yeah.
But he knew that he was an Israelite. So like us, being raised, in Spanish and English doctrine, Moses stood up for his people and was even willing. I'm not saying going through it, but Moses was even willing to kill, protect his brothers, the Egyptians, and was able to stand up for them and follow the Most High dearly, which is the walk that essentially we're on. He made a great example of it. The righteous man, and the man that had a speech impairment. He wasn't perfect all the way, but yet he was still bold and firm and stood there, and guided them. So I would say Moses.
Absolutely. And Moses, that story of him getting lost 40 days in the desert or something like that, right? 40 nights.
That's Jesus. That's Yahweh.
Oh, well, let's see. Didn't the Israelites get lost in the desert or no?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. You're
right. Let's see. So even after they heard from God and all that, or was it 40 years? Yeah, it was 40 years, right?
40 years.
Yeah. So even after hearing from Christ and all of that, they still kind of not believed, right? And they got lost for 40.
Right.
That's crazy. But eventually they found their way. Lets you know that, even Moses, he wasn't perfect. They still. All right. So how about you, man?
Well, you kind of took that right out from under me. I was going to say Moses, but honestly, I would say Paul. And the reason being is because Paul was a Pharisee of the Pharisees, the man that was mastered in the law, and he was very, very intelligent. And he used to persecute Israelites before the following of Yahweh, right? And so he did what's essentially a complete 180, and he started fighting for the Israelites that were believing in Yahweh, and he started converting the Israelites that have abandoned their culture, Israelites that were raised in a foreign culture. Israelites that were completely lost in other nations, right? But the thing about it is that the reason I appreciate that brother so much is that he had to, for lack of a better way to put it, he had to dumb down his understanding to reach these people that were completely lost. Him being a master of the law, a Pharisee, he had to really break it down to very, very simple terms to get our people to believe in the Mashiach, Yahushua, and start keeping the law. So, and that's where Peter says that Paul is a stumbling block for our people, because people read Paul's letters and they think it's okay to eat pork and sin. They think it's okay to constantly be sinning, but that's not what Paul is saying. And then when you go to Acts 21, I think it is, 21, where he gets put on trial by his peers and his fellow Pharisees, they question him and they strike him, they hit him and they test him, and they're like there's one point where they're like, hey, are you you're not bad mouthing the high priest, are you? And Paul very wisely said, well, I didn't know he was the high priest, otherwise I would have done it, because the law said you're not supposed to. You know what I mean? And they're trying to trip him up and play games with him so he can kind of prove him right that he's teaching sin, but they can't get him because he's that slick and he's that smart with the law. So there's varying degrees of Paul in the scriptures, and a lot of people get lost in the loving, welcoming, simple message of love that Paul propagates. But there's a very deep and profound and sharp brother in those scriptures that's not playing any games. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, amazing. Let's see. I think my favorite figure from the Bible would probably have to be. I don't know. I got a lot of appreciation for Lot and him getting out of there. You know what I mean? His wife. Hey, baby. His wife didn't have that same luck, but. Let's see. Let's see. Speaking in tongues, is that a thing? Should we believe that? Like
no. You speak tongues? No. What it means to speak tongues, it's not like it's none of that, bro. You know, there's entire like clubhouses and podcasts where like a lot of Christians get together and it's like for like 5 hours.
Hell yeah.
For like 5 hours.
What is that, man?
What speaking in tongues is talking about is speaking in other languages. That's it. So I speak English, obviously. I speak Spanish. I speak Japanese. I can speak some ancient Hebrew. I'm not a master of it, but I can write it as well. You know what I mean? I know some of the block script Assyrian Hebrew, modern day Hebrew, and other languages, but very, very little. That's what it means to speak in tongues.
Okay.
How dare you!